Welcome back, listeners. Today we're diving deep into a case that shook India in 2018. It all started in Jaipur, with a young man's disappearance. But as the police investigated, what seemed like a simple missing person case turned into something else. A story of manipulation, lies, and ultimately, murder.
This case, it really captured the public's imagination. And for good reason, right? It wasn't just about a single crime. It tapped into some really deep anxieties in Indian society, especially around the desire for wealth and status and how that plays out in the online world.
Yeah, and at the center of it all is Priya, a woman who went to extreme lengths to get what she wanted. So let's start at the beginning. Tell me, what do we know about Priya's early life?
Well, she came from a pretty small town called Fina, very traditional, not a lot of opportunities.
And what was her family like?
Loving, supportive, but they had limited means. They saw education as Priya's only way out, to break free from poverty and build a better life. So there was a lot of pressure on her to excel academically.
And she did excel, right? She eventually earned a place at a pretty prestigious college in Jaipur. It sounds like she was on the path her parents had envisioned. So where did things go wrong?
Well, the move to Jaipur was a big change for Priya. Imagine going from a small town to this bustling city, surrounded by people from wealthy backgrounds. She just didn't fit in.
You can see how that could be tough. Did Priya ever express those feelings of being out of place?
Some of her former classmates have said that she was very quiet, withdrawn, almost like she was watching everyone else from a distance. It seems like that sense of being an outsider really fueled her desire to prove herself, to reach that same level of status and acceptance she saw in her peers.
So she wanted a different life, one that felt out of reach. Is that what led her to sex work?
Yes. Priya started working as an escort under the name Neha. Now, there's some debate about whether she did this purely for financial reasons or if it was also about power, maybe a way to exert control, especially over men from wealthier backgrounds. Either way, it was a pretty drastic shift from the path her family had in mind for her.
It definitely seems like a turning point. I mean, she dropped out of college around the same time, right? You're
Yeah.
completely abandoning the very thing that had brought her to Jaipur in the first place.
Exactly. And we start to see a different side of Priya emerge. She becomes more manipulative, realizing she can use her intelligence and her looks to get what she wants, even if it means breaking the rules.
And that's where the scams start, right? These increasingly bold schemes. I read about how she used fake escort services to extort men. Tell me about that.
Oh, it was clever in a twisted way. She'd set up these elaborate profiles online with alluring photos and promises of discreet encounters. But once she had the men hooked, she'd turn the tables, threatening to expose their infidelity or accuse them of assault unless they paid up.
Wow. Did she ever get caught?
Oh, yeah. In 2014, one of her victims, a businessman who was terrified of the scandal, went to the police. Priya was arrested, but managed to get out on bail. She played the victim, claimed it was all a misunderstanding, and somehow it worked.
So a slap on the wrist and she's back to her old tricks.
Yeah.
Did this experience deter her at all?
Not even a little. It seems like it just made her more confident. Like she genuinely believed she could outsmart the system, that her charm and quick thinking would always save her. And that belief led her to plan something even more daring. An ATM robbery.
Wait, an ATM robbery? That seems like a huge leap from extortion. What made her think she could pull that off?
Well, I think desperation played a part. Priya's lifestyle was expensive. She always needed money. But there was also that arrogance, that belief that she was untouchable. She found an accomplice, a carpenter, and they targeted a standalone ATM, tried to break in using a gas cutter.
Did they succeed?
No, thankfully. 2 police officers on patrol saw what was happening and intervened. Priya managed to escape in the chaos, but was later arrested at her home.
So a second arrest, do you think that would be a wake-up call?
You would, wouldn't you? But again, she managed to get released on bail pretty quickly. The reasons for that leniency, well, they're complicated. It reflects some of the biases within the Indian legal system at the time. But that second arrest was a turning point for Priya. She realized that these one-off crimes weren't going to get her the kind of life she wanted. She needed a long-term strategy, a way to secure a constant flow of wealth. And that's when she set her sights on a wealthy businessman named Gujal Singh.
So her MO changes again. Instead of quick scams, she's now focused on building relationships for financial gain.
Exactly. And Gujal, unfortunately, became her next target. The relationship started off like a whirlwind romance. Priya was attentive, charming, and Gujal, smitten with her, showered her with gifts and money. But it wasn't long before her true motives became clear.
Which were?
Extortion, plain and simple. Priya started demanding increasingly large sums of money from Gajal, threatening to accuse him of rape if he didn't pay up. And when he tried to break things off, she got even more aggressive, threatening his family, promising to ruin his life.
Sounds like she was using the same tactics from the fake escort service, but on a grander scale now.
Absolutely. But this time the stakes were much higher. Gajal was a well-known figure in Jaipur, and Priya knew that these accusations could destroy him.
So did he give in to her demands?
At first, yes. He was terrified of the consequences and paid her to try and silence her. But the blackmail didn't stop. It just became this endless cycle of demands and threats. Finally, Gajal decided he couldn't take it anymore and started recording his conversations with Priya.
Smart move. Gathering evidence to protect himself.
Absolutely. Those recordings would later be crucial in exposing Priya's manipulation and bringing her to justice. But before that happened, Priya decided to try her luck in the world of online dating. Enter Tinder.
So this is where the story intersects with the rise of dating apps and all the potential dangers that come with them. Priya, at 27, was on the hunt for her next target. What was her mindset at this point?
Well, she was riding high on her past successes, convinced that she could manipulate anyone, any situation to her advantage. She was untouchable, at least in her own mind, and that arrogance, sadly, is what led her to Daunt, a young man whose own vulnerabilities made him the perfect prey for her next scheme.
Okay, so we've set the stage, we've seen Priya's background, her early crimes, how her tactics evolved. But now it's time to introduce the other key player in this tragic story, Daunt.
And his story is just as compelling. He wasn't exactly who he presented himself to be either. Daunt's story, it takes us to a very different world from Priya's. To a small town called Padampur. It was a world where, people's aspirations were more modest, rooted in that familiar rhythm of rural life. That was Daunt's reality growing up.
But Daunt, he had bigger dreams, right? He wanted more than what his small town could offer.
Oh, absolutely. From a young age, he was just captivated by Bollywood, that whole world of glitz and glamour, He dreamed of escaping his ordinary life and becoming a star, someone recognized all over India.
That's a dream a lot of young people share, especially in India, where Bollywood hold such a powerful sway over the imagination. So what did Daunt do to chase that dream?
Well, he took a leap of faith, left the comfort of his family and hometown to try his luck in the big city. First, he went to Delhi, but eventually he ended up in Mumbai, the heart of the Bollywood film industry.
Mumbai, the city of dreams, right? But it's also a city of intense competition and, let's be honest, countless broken dreams.
Yeah.
What was Daunt's experience like there?
Tough. It was a real struggle. The reality of Mumbai was a far cry from the glamorous world he had imagined.
I can only imagine.
He faced constant rejection, despite his good looks and his charm. I mean, the competition is fierce.
Yeah.
He managed to get some small roles, mostly as an extra, but that big break, it always seemed to elude him. He even tried producing, hoping to create his own opportunities, but even that didn't really pan out.
So not only was he facing professional disappointment, but he was racking up debt too, trying to keep up appearances in a city as expensive as Mumbai.
Exactly. He got caught in this vicious cycle, right? The pressure to succeed kept mounting while his finances were getting worse and worse. He was living a double life, basically, presenting this image of success to his family back home while quietly struggling to stay afloat.
And that's where the online persona Vivaan Key comes in.
Right. He created Vivaan Key as a way to escape his own reality, to project this image of wealth and confidence that he didn't actually have.
It's a classic tale of online deception. But I think it also speaks to something deeper, this pressure to maintain a certain image, especially in the age of social media.
Oh, absolutely. We're constantly bombarded with these curated versions of people's lives. It's easy to feel inadequate when your own reality doesn't measure up.
Right.
And in Daunt's case, this manufactured persona had some really tragic consequences.
Because it was a Vivaan Key who caught Priya's eye on Tinder.
Exactly. She saw him as her ticket to financial freedom, this wealthy target she could easily manipulate.
She had no idea that the man she thought was a successful businessman was actually a struggling actor drowning in debt. It's like they were both living parallel lives, each hiding behind this mask of deception.
It really is a fascinating parallel, isn't it? Two individuals, both yearning for a life that felt beyond their grasp, both resorting to fabrication and manipulation to try to achieve their goals. Their connection on Tinder, it wasn't based on genuine compatibility. It was this shared desire for something they lacked. wealth, and status.
And tragically, this shared deception, it set them on a collision course that would have devastating consequences. So tell me, how did Priya lure Dant into her trap?
Priya, she saw Dawn as this wealthy Vivankee, and she started, laying her trap. She played the role of the smitten admirer online, showered him with compliments, attention, the drill.
Right.
But she didn't rush things. She knew that to gain his trust, to really lower his guard, she had to string him along, make it seem like there was a genuine connection.
It's chilling how calculated it all was. Did she use any specific tactics to get information about his finances?
Oh, yeah. During their online chats, she'd casually ask about his work, his lifestyle, even dropped hints about her own supposed wealth,
Yeah.
just to encourage him to boast a little.
And Dant, remember, he was already living a lie, trying to maintain that Vivankee persona, so he was probably more than happy to exaggerate his financial status.
Exactly. It was a vicious cycle of deception. And the more Priya learned about Dant's real-life struggles, his debts, the more she saw him as the perfect target for this audacious plan she had been cooking up, a kidnapping for ransom.
And to pull that off, she needed help. That's where Dikshant and Laka come in.
Right. Dikshant was Priya's trusted accomplice, someone who had already proven his loyalty. But Laka, he was Dant's best friend, a tragic pawn in Priya's game.
What about Laka? Did he know what Priya was really up to?
Not at first. Priya, being the master manipulator that she was, she spun this whole story for Laka, claimed that Dant had been harassing her, that he was a stalker, and that he needed to be taught a lesson. She appealed to Laka's sense of loyalty, his sense of justice, and convinced him to take part in what she initially framed as just a harmless prank.
So Laka was drawn in, blinded by his trust in Priya and his concern for his friend. It's a reminder of how easily people can be manipulated, especially when emotions are running high.
Absolutely. And as Priya's plan unfolded, Laka found himself trapped, unable to back out of this increasingly horrific situation.
So let's talk about the events of May 2nd, 2018. How did the kidnapping actually go down?
Priya, using that fake Vivankee persona, she invited Dant to her apartment, told him they were finally going to meet in person. Dant, excited, completely oblivious of the danger, he showed up at her doorstep with a bottle of wine, even condoms. He thought he was in for a romantic encounter.
It's just heartbreaking to imagine his naivety, his complete trust in this online persona that was nothing but a lie.
It really is. And as soon as he stepped inside, the trap was sprung. Dikshant and Laka, they were waiting. Dant was attacked, beaten, tied to a chair.
Priya's mask of seduction just dropped, revealing the cold-hearted criminal beneath.
Exactly. No more pretending to be the smitten admirer. Priya demanded to know where his money was, started rummaging through his things. But the reality of Dant's financial situation, it became apparent very quickly.
The illusion was shattered. The whole Vivankee facade crumbled before her eyes.
Right. Dant, terrified, in pain, he broke down, confessed that he wasn't the wealthy businessman he'd pretended to be, that he was struggling, in debt, desperate.
How did Priya react to that?
She was furious. Her plan was falling apart. The money she was expecting, it was all gone. Her anger and frustration just boiled over, and the violence escalated.
Dant, realizing the situation he was in, he tried to reason with them, right? He claimed he could get money from a business associate.
Yeah, he made these frantic phone calls, begging for help, promising to get them the money if they'd just let him go. But every attempt to get the ransom failed, and the situation just got more and more desperate.
Priya, I imagine she must have been panicking at that point, realizing her plan had completely backfired.
Absolutely, and that's when things took a truly horrific turn. Priya, seeing Dant as a liability, she decided to silence him for good.
This is the darkest part of the story, the point of no return.
The details of Dant's murder are really brutal. He was suffocated, stabbed repeatedly, and his body, it was left to decompose in Priya's apartment for days.
It's a chilling example of how far Priya was willing to go. She had lost all sense of humanity, driven by this cold-blooded ruthlessness.
After the murder, Priya and her accomplices, they tried to cover their tracks, cleaned the apartment, disposed of Dant's body in a suitcase they bought with his own credit card, even tried to withdraw money from his account.
But they were sloppy, right? Panicked. They left a trail of evidence that would eventually lead to their arrest.
Exactly. The police, led by Inspector Gurvendra Singh, they had been investigating Dant's disappearance and were already closing in on Priya. They'd tracked her movements, analyzed phone records, gathered witness statements. They were piecing together the puzzle.
And it all culminated in their arrest at a train station as they were trying to flee Jaipur.
Yes. The police, acting on a tip, apprehended all three of them. The trial that followed was a media sensation. Everyone in India was captivated by this case, by the audacity of Priya's crimes.
And Priya, even with all the evidence against her, she remained defiant, right? Showed no remorse.
None at all. She tried to shift the blame onto Dikshant and Laka, claiming she wasn't involved in the actual murder. But the prosecution, they had the forensic evidence, the witness testimonies, and those crucial recordings that Gajal Singh had made. Her lies were exposed, one by one.
In the end, Priya, Dikshant, and Laka, they were all found guilty of kidnapping, murder, and criminal conspiracy. They were sentenced to life in prison. Justice, in a legal sense, was served. But the scars of this crime, they run deep.
Absolutely. Dant's family, they continue to grieve his loss, haunted by the way his life was cut short. And Priya's story, it serves as a chilling reminder of just how dark human ambition can be, the lengths that people will go to for wealth and status.
It's a deeply disturbing case, but there are some valuable lessons here. It highlights the importance of online safety, the need to be critical, and the dangers of falling for these carefully constructed facades.
It also reminds us that the line between victim and perpetrator can be blurry, and the consequences of unchecked ambition can be absolutely devastating.
And that concludes our deep dive into the case of India's Tinder killer. It's a story that forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world around us. We hope this exploration has been both informative and thought-provoking. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and stay safe.